I'm curious if you have an example of something you designed for a specific queen that you really love and feel proud of.
God, which one do I choose? Willow Pill. She came to me with this idea of a psychedelic mushroom, and then when it was featured on RuPaul's Drag Race, it was actually one of the first time that RuPaul asked who made this.
This outfit?
Eda Birthing made it. Eda Birthing.
Uma Thurman? Oh, Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman made this.
Yes. Oh, great. I love her work.
Even though I came out as Uma Thurman in the end, it was actually really great.
Welcome to Pop and Politics, your guide to art and culture in Turkey. I'm your host, Kenan Behzat Sharpe. Each week we are joined by an artist, musician, director, writer, actor, or other creative worker in Turkey. Today we are joined by Eda Yorulmazoğlu, a Turkish-American designer who has created costumes for many famous drag queens and performers under the name of Eda Birthing. She studied fashion design at the Art Institute of Chicago and then began dressing drag performers there, even having her work featured on the international famous show RuPaul's Drag Race and worn by other world-famous queens. While visiting in Istanbul in March 2020, she decided to stay here and opened her own workshop and studio in Istanbul's Ortaköy district, which is where we are filming from today. Welcome, Eda. Thanks for coming on Pop and Politics, and thanks for hosting us in your studio here.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So let's start with the beginning. I know that you studied fashion design in Chicago, and it began that you started designing costumes for drag queens. Can you tell us a story about how you started doing what you do now?
Well, when I was in school, I studied fashion, obviously, and it took me a while to figure out where I wanted to go with it. I was kind of torn between trying to create ready-to-wear or just costumes in general. And it wasn't until my last year, my senior year, when I got invited to Berlin nightclub to be the fashion designer of the night. And I dressed all the queens there. There was like over 20 queens, I feel like. Shea Coulee was one of them actually, right before she got on Drag Race. And that night I realized like, this is where I want to be, because I gave them the garments and throughout the night they would change it. Like my most favorite memory is when my friend Bon Bon took the stroller that I gave her and then wore it as a top randomly throughout the night, and I was just like, this is my home. And after that I never left.
You just felt comfortable there and accepted? Yes,
because no one asked me to change, and they accepted me, and they also really inspired me, so why would I leave?
Absolutely. So like you mentioned, I know your work has been featured on RuPaul's Drag Race and other places, and I know often people come to you with ideas and you design something especially for them. I'm curious if you have an example of something you designed for a specific queen that you really love and feel proud of.
God, which one do I choose? Well, one of my favorites is Willow Pill. And she came to me with this idea of a psychedelic mushroom, which I love. And at first I was kind of hesitant because of the color scheme she wanted to go with. More like a soft white kind of a color scheme. But I think, working with her was super easy, and creating her little mushroom dream was so fun to do. And then when it was featured on RuPaul's Drag Race, it was actually one of the first time that RuPaul asked who made this.
This outfit?
Eda Birthing made it. Eda Birthing.
Uma Thurman? Oh, Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman made this.
Yes. Oh, great. I love her work.
Even though I came out as Uma Thurman in the end, it was actually a really great exposure for me, because it became a joke, and that obviously helps my business, and I love it. Like, it was such a great experience and so great working with Willow Pill. And it's one of my favorite garments. I actually have a little doll of it over there now.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. It's that, wait, where'd she go? Oh, she's on the move. Where did she go? My precious. Oh, this is Willow.
So you were in Chicago, and now you're here in Istanbul, where you're running your business and you have your studio. How did that switch happen that you started living here in Istanbul?
Well, I never had intentions on leaving Chicago because, I was born there, grew up there, studied there, worked there, and I decided that I wanted to create a production house. So I came here and I was just gonna stay for a month while I set it up. But it was basically when Corona hit and I couldn't go back. I remember there was like one flight left and my dad took it because he has to work. And so me and my mom stayed behind. And I think it was like 3 months go by. And then I think I just kind of took it as a sign, like I need this change. And I've been thinking about a change for a while, but I don't think I would have been able to do it without a push. And it just made sense for me to live here, build a production house, and I can grow my business because before I was doing mostly everything myself. And that was kind of really hard. The patterning, designing, fabric shopping, selling, marketing. And with that, I also had other jobs. I worked at a club as a door person. I also taught sewing on the weekends. And it was nice to come here and I could finally find help. So I decided it's smarter to stay.
It was totally accidental then.
Yes, very. It's a good accident, though.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of people are happy you're here. I'm actually curious about the drag scene here in Istanbul and wondering if you can describe it a bit for the viewers who aren't familiar with it. Of course, there are drag scenes internationally all over the world, but Istanbul has, maybe we could say a small but really, strong and really exciting scene. And I'm curious about what kind of the spaces are like also where people have shows. So I know you had an event at Blind Istanbul, and I know there's other small venues, a lot of them around Taksim, where people will have drag shows. What are these spaces like? Is it a place where people can feel more free than they do in their daily lives in the city here?
Definitely. These spaces give these queens and even just the queer community in general a space to just express themselves and hopefully feel safer. Obviously, nothing is 100% safe, but at least it gives them that outlet. But the differences I do see, like comparing to Chicago or Istanbul, is there's just so much less opportunity here. And especially after the pandemic, a lot of places closed. And I always hear, we want to perform, but the spaces are limited. And there's so many queens that want to perform or start, drag, but they just don't know how to start or where to even go because there's not that many jobs in it right now, and it's kind of a big competition for it. Whereas in Chicago, there's so many jobs, so many places you can perform, and we even have competitions for new queens to come in and just do their shows. It's like a 3-round show, and I even performed in that before. And I think about if I had started here in drag, it would have been totally difficult, more difficult for sure. But I do feel like watching the drag shows here, it's different because they're literally fighting for that spot and you feel that, and it's a great experience to see.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. So on the one hand, it's the drag scene has the same challenges that other entertainment sectors have, where there's less and less venues and it's competitive, people can't make money off of it, but also even compounded with that, there's the other kind of social pressures of how few spaces maybe people can practice their art.
Definitely.
Like that.
And there are some spaces, but those spaces they're not 100% queer friendly as well. And I feel like they're kind of just using them for the money. And it's kind of hard to find a place that's 100% queer owned, queer run, and just understanding of your needs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So last of all, I want to ask you use the name Eda Birthing, and I know that childhood is a really important theme for you, and you have this short film you were part of, Glimmer of Us, where this metaphor of birthing, of course, is really prominent. I'm curious about the place of these images and concepts in your work of childhood and being newly born and all these kinds of things.
Well, I like to play around with the ideas of childhood, because when we were kids, we just had a different kind of imagination where it was limitless. Most people didn't really care what people thought. You didn't even understand the idea of judgment as much as when you're an adult. And your imagination could go like a million miles. It was like a never-ending concept. And when we become adults, we kind of lose that. We're like, I need to work. What are people thinking about me? I need to establish myself. And with all these stresses that life gives you, you kind of forget to just enjoy. So when I create my stuff, I don't want anyone to kind of focus on those stresses. I want them to forget and just enjoy and have fun. And that's why even when I do fashion shows, it's not a regular fashion show. It's a dance, it's a performance. Because with the fashion shows we're seeing today still, it's basically mostly one type of a body type or like super expensive brands, and people can't help but compare themselves to the model. And with mine, I don't want them to compare themselves to the model. I just want them to enjoy. And with the concept with Glimmer of Us, it's a memory. And you see the film opening up and the creature is sewing, and she looks at a portrait of the past and she starts remembering like from the beginning, like when she was born, and then when she found her group of friends, and then when she first went to the club and she's super nervous, and then they all accept her and she finds her home, and then it goes back to the future or the present when she remembers that beautiful dream. And it's just kind of showing her timeline and the beautiful life she had. And it's kind of reflective of my own experience.
I was gonna ask that, yeah.
It's kind of reflective of my own experience. To just remember those like beautiful moments of like kind of what created who you were. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Eda. It was a real pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, of course.